My marriage didn't just fall apart. It blew up spectacularly when I learned my wife was carrying another man's child. And not just any man, the local vet. To make matters worse, her devoutly religious parents helped keep the entire affair under wraps. I didn't explode. I didn't grovel. I planned. And when the moment was right, I exposed everything in one calculated strike. I'm 31 now. Becky and I had been husband and wife for 4 years. We first crossed paths back in college. I was wrapping up the final stretch of my business degree while she drifted between marketing courses and organizing campus events. I noticed her at a noisy pregame party. She kept stealing glances at our group, trying to play it cool. Eventually, she and her crew made their way over. With a textbook oops move, she bumped into me and spilled hard cider all over my favorite game day jersey. I just laughed it off and teased, "Looks like you just bought me dinner." She blushed like crazy, giggled, and apologized more times than I could count. She left with my number in her phone, and by that same evening, she'd already texted me. From there, we clicked fast. We spent hours talking, deep, open conversations. She told me about growing up under the strict rule of her church-obsessed parents. I opened up about losing my dad when I was a teen and stepping up to help my mom manage our family's farm. Some nights we'd drive into the middle of nowhere, lie back in the truck bed under the stars, and share our hopes for the future. She used to sketch dream houses on napkins while I explained irrigation layouts and crop rotations. She always listened like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. 2 years into dating, I proposed by the lake she used to swim in as a kid. I'd scraped and saved for months to buy her a ring that would leave her speechless, and it worked. She cried happy tears and whispered that she couldn't wait to start a family together someday. Fast forward a few more years, and I thought I'd built the kind of life men dream about. A loving wife, a thriving farm that I built from nothing, and a future that I earned through hard work and sacrifice. Nothing came easily. I clocked in 70-hour work weeks, buried myself in risky loans, and poured every ounce of energy into that land. I transformed 40 acres of dry, useless earth into a successful business that brought in close to $300,000 last year. All of it. For her. I wanted Becky to live the life she always dreamed of. When we tied the knot, we were aligned on the major things: kids, family, a stable home. But not long after the wedding, things shifted. One day, out of nowhere, she told me, "Let's hold off on having kids." I was caught off guard. Still, I didn't push. I figured she just needed space, and I could respect that. So I doubled down on building a future we'd both be proud of. She was obsessed with the idea of rustic charm, so I bought us a quaint little farm just outside town, hoping to give her exactly what she'd always talked about. But Becky's rustic fantasy came with designer price tags. She insisted on buying a six-figure purebred horse because a regular one wouldn't look right in the photos. The thing stood in the pasture like a lawn ornament while I bled money, $2,000 a month for supplements, a vet, and a trainer who came by more than she did. Then came the imported Brahman cattle because our Herefords weren't visually impressive. I nearly choked when she called them too average looking. Oh, and the trucks. Every year she needed a brand new diesel pickup. Not because the old one broke down, no. Because the new one had better leather seats and came in a sleeker matte gray. I paid for every bit of it. I kept telling myself that if it made her happy, it was worth the cost. Until it all fell apart. One Thursday afternoon, I got a text from Emily, Becky's childhood best friend. She said she needed to talk, said it was urgent. I figured it was about Becky's birthday or some community event. Becky wasn't home, so I told her to swing by. Emily and I were never tight. She always seemed to be in survival mode, barely making rent, always promoting some side hustle on social media that never panned out. She worked as a vet tech during the week and bartended Friday and Saturday nights at a half-lit dive called the Rusty Nail just to scrape by. Lately, she'd been rambling about starting an organic pet food brand, said mainstream food was garbage, and her home-cooked blend cured her cat's issues. A few months ago, she asked if I could invest or knew someone who would. I said I'd think about it, but honestly, I never saw her as someone who could follow through. She had big ideas, but zero execution. When she arrived, she texted again to make sure Becky wasn't around. She walked in with this jittery energy, like she'd practiced what she was about to say. "Want something to drink?" I asked, trying to keep it light. "No, this'll just take a second," she replied, avoiding eye contact. She pulled a thick folder from her tote, dropped it on the table and said, "You deserve to know the truth." I thought it was a pitch deck or a loan request. But as I opened it, my world started to spin. Inside was a trove of betrayal, screenshots, photos, GPS logs, time-stamped videos, receipts. Becky had been sleeping with Dr. Jason Cooper, the town's charming vet. The same guy who'd charged me $5,000 last year for treating our horse's colic and mailed us a Christmas card featuring him, his picture-perfect wife Katie, and their golden retriever in matching sweaters. Katie, by the way, teaches Sunday school and chairs the church's charity board. All I could whisper was, "You've got to be kidding me," as I turned page after page. There were over 70 pages in that folder. Emily had sorted everything by date, each section flagged with color-coded notes. It was chilling how thorough it was. The photos weren't just suggestive, they were explicit. Timestamps showed them in hotel lobbies when Becky was supposed to be at her mom's church bake sale. There was even surveillance footage from my own front yard, Jason's truck pulling into the driveway less than half an hour after I left for a business trip in Nebraska. 2 days later, they strolled out of the house like a couple on vacation, holding hands, kissing near his tailgate. There were message logs showing hundreds of conversations between the two of them dating back 8 months. "I love when he's out of town again." "Relax, babe. He's got no clue." Reading those texts hit me like taking a full-force kick from one of those overpriced Brahmin cattle she insisted we buy. Turns out, every so-called girls' getaway Becky took was actually a rendezvous with him. And each time I left town for farming trips, whether to haul equipment or close a deal, they'd turn my own house into their personal love nest. Home surveillance footage confirmed that his truck spent the night at our place, at least 11 separate times while I was away. One document showed a hotel booking in Memphis during a weekend she'd claimed she was at a spa retreat with Emily and 2 other girlfriends. Except there was one glaring problem. Emily was in the Bahamas that weekend, posting a flood of beach selfies on Instagram. I remember because I'd scrolled through them at a gas station. So, who were these phantom friends she was supposedly traveling with? No one. It was just her and Dr. Cooper enjoying a luxury suite I unknowingly funded. But it didn't stop there. It got worse. Becky was pregnant, and it wasn't mine. I'd driven her to the doctor's office myself, thinking she was ill. Meanwhile, she was sending selfies to him with captions like, "Your baby's making me nauseous today," and "Can't wait to lie and say it's his, so he'll stop nagging me about starting a family." There was even a message thread from just 3 weeks ago. Her: "I think I'm going to have to tell him soon. My belly's starting to show." Him: "So what's the plan?" Her: "Duh, I'll say it's his. He's been dying to be a dad. He'll be too excited to do the math." I had to step outside after that. I stood in the middle of our yard, fists clenched, heart pounding, trying to keep it together. I couldn't decide whether to vomit or smash something. The nerve she had, planning to pass off another man's child as mine while probably still sneaking around with the real father behind my back. When I walked back into the kitchen, Emily was still sitting there, casually scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just detonated a bomb on my entire life. "How long have you known?" I asked. She slowly set her phone down. "Started piecing it together about 6 months ago. Got actual proof maybe 3 months back. Took some time to gather everything." "Why tell me now?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. That's when she laid it all out. "I know it's messed up," she admitted, not meeting my gaze. "But I need to get out of here. I want to start over somewhere new. Remember that pet food idea I mentioned? I've got the plan ready. Just need startup capital." I stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "You're serious? You want me to bankroll your business?" She shook her head quickly. "Not like that. The thing is, Becky caught me snooping on her phone a few weeks ago. Girls' night. She left her phone unlocked and was texting him right in front of me. When she went to the bathroom, I scrolled through their messages and took photos. But she came back early, saw me doing it, and flipped. Threatened me. Told me if I ever showed you or anyone else, she'd ruin my life. Said her dad would make sure I'd never find work in this town again. And she's been telling people I hit on Jason and he rejected me. That I'm jealous. People are actually believing it." Her laugh was bitter and cracked. "So yeah, I'm screwed either way. Figured I'd at least try to do one decent thing before I skipped town." I wasn't sure if I trusted her story entirely, but the evidence she gave me was undeniable. The messages, photos, timelines, everything lined up with dates Becky claimed she was elsewhere. When I asked how she got all of it, she said 2 of her friends helped keep tabs and gather info. It apparently took months to compile. "So what are you looking for?" I asked. "A loan? An investment?" "Call it whatever you want," she said. 50 grand. The natural pet food market's exploding. I've got everything ready. I just need someone who's willing to believe in the vision. And oddly enough, in that moment, I didn't hate her for asking. At least she was being honest, far more than Becky ever was. And whether it was selfish or not, bringing me this dossier spared me from wasting even more time raising a child that wasn't mine or staying with someone who thought I was blind and stupid. Leave the business plan, I told her. Let me take care of things on my end first. Then we'll talk. She gave a small nod, seemed relieved, and stood to leave. At the door, she glanced back. For what it's worth, I always thought you were too good for her. Sure. I didn't buy the flattery, but fair's fair. She gave me the truth, and I settled my debts. I kept flipping through the evidence. They mocked me, literally laughed behind my back. There were full threads about how clueless I was, how hard I worked while they played house. They joked that all my new farm equipment just gave them more alone time because I was always distracted with work. They even laughed about the brand of tractor I bought. That's when I pulled up our joint bank records and started cross-checking dates. Over the past 8 months, more than $115,000 had been siphoned off. Withdrawals I didn't recognize, high-end jewelry purchases for pieces I'd never seen, rental charges for a luxury cabin upstate. And just when I thought I'd reached the bottom, I found something even more disgusting. Screenshots of Becky texting her parents, Pastor Robert and his perfect wife Susan, the holy couple, the spiritual pillars of the town. They had known everything. And they decided to help her hide it, just to preserve their saintly image. Pastor Robert isn't your average small-town preacher. He leads First Baptist, the county's largest congregation. More than 500 attendees crowd the pews each Sunday, mostly to be seen rather than to worship. He rides around in a shiny new Escalade, owned by the ministry. His wife, Susan, oversees the women's group and juggles half a dozen charitable committees. Together, they've spent the last 2 decades acting like moral royalty, parading their righteousness and criticizing anyone who didn't measure up to their holy standards. Always preaching about traditional family values, warning that society was crumbling because people didn't live like them. The entire time, they were fully aware their daughter was having an affair. I saw message after message from Becky to her mom. Mom, I'm panicking. Emily knows about Jason and me. What if she tells him? Her mother replied, Don't stress, sweetie. Your father will take care of it. Then came one from Robert himself. We've spoken to Emily. She understands the consequences. Just be more discreet moving forward. These were the same two who hosted me for Sunday meals like clockwork. The man who called me son, the woman who constantly asked when we'd be giving her grandkids. All while knowing their daughter was deceiving me and carrying another man's child. Digging deeper made it worse. I came across their private conversations, discussing how to spin the pregnancy. Pastor Robert wrote, I've thought this through. For now, the best course is to let him assume the baby is his. Once Jason sorts out his own situation, we can consider next steps. He may move his practice, possibly nearby. When things settle, you can file for divorce. Call it spiritual consequences. The alternative is serious harm to our family's image and my ministry. There it was, laid out like a business plan. I was supposed to play the role of supportive husband, raise a child that wasn't mine, then get tossed aside once Jason was free. All to keep Robert's reputation clean. It was hard to accept that the same people who prayed over us on our wedding day, who gave us a Bible with a handwritten message about sacred vows, were the architects of this lie. Suddenly it made sense why Becky's parents had gotten so intrusive. Random drop-ins, daily calls to check on her. I thought they were just being involved. Turns out they were supervising the cover-up. Every Sunday for 4 years, I sat there in the front row while Pastor Robert preached about virtue, truth, and godliness. I gave generously to their building fund, volunteered at church functions, and respected them not just as family, but as spiritual leaders. And the whole time they were lying to my face, using me. When I finally finished reviewing everything, I returned the evidence to the folder and locked it in my safe. They thought they had outsmarted me, but they'd underestimated the wrong man. With the facts in hand, I didn't wait. I called Marcus, a divorce attorney from a neighboring county, far enough away to keep things quiet for now. I kept my routine normal for 2 days, not just to process everything, but to observe Becky acting out her charade. Every word, every gesture. It was like watching a performance, and I played my part, the clueless husband. I even showed up for dinner at her parents' house the very next day. As we held hands for grace, Pastor Robert asked God to bless the food and this loving family. I almost laughed out loud. That Monday morning, I told Becky I had to check an irrigation issue on the south field. Instead, I drove 40 miles to a Starbucks in the next county and called Marcus from the parking lot. He asked, "Did you two sign a prenup?" "No." "Doesn't matter," he replied. "Your state isn't a community property one. She'll only receive assets she can prove she contributed to." Considering her boutique side businesses had never turned a profit, that wasn't much. And the farm? I bought it myself, meaning it stays with me. She'd be left with no home, no land, no savings, just debts and a baby that's not mine. With this kind of documented infidelity and the paternity issue, Marcus explained, we have a very favorable case. Judges don't tolerate this level of deception. He explained next steps: filing temporary orders, discovery, financial disclosures. He told me to collect records, bank statements, title documents, account histories, anything proving ownership before and during marriage. I went to work pulling everything. I had proof of withdrawals that matched hotel stays. I'd even recorded several of her phone calls, legal in our one-party consent state. Marcus was practically celebrating on the phone. With this kind of evidence, she'd walk away with the bare minimum. He even suggested we could pursue damages for fraud. Intentional misrepresentation of paternity and misuse of shared funds could make a solid legal case. She wanted out? Fine. But she wouldn't leave with my money. While Marcus prepared the filings, I moved the majority of our liquid funds into accounts with my name only. I didn't drain everything, just enough so if she tried anything sneaky, there'd be little left for her to take. Then I contacted Rick, a real estate agent who specializes in agricultural sales. He walked the property, checked the books, and gave me an appraisal 30% above what I expected. Turns out, commercial development in the area had pushed land prices sky high. As soon as the divorce was official, I could cash out. Becky wouldn't even know it was listed until I was gone. I also started checking out new properties across state lines. There was a cattle ranch in Montana for less than what mine might sell for. Better soil, more water access, newer house. I started lining up options and making inquiries. No rush, but it felt good to be planning an exit. Meanwhile, Becky had started dropping subtle pregnancy hints, skipping wine at dinner, talking about nausea in the morning, buying ginger ale and crackers, like she was soft-launching the big news, trying to frame it as if she was ready to build a family with me. One night, she curled up beside me on the couch, looked into my eyes, and started talking about how maybe it was finally time to think seriously about having children. I kept the performance going, smiling, nodding, saying exactly what she wanted to hear, even though I felt absolutely nothing inside. Keeping the act alive drained me, but it also gave me a strange sense of control. Every false word she spoke, every time I mirrored her fake grin, every fabricated story she told just reminded me that I was right to go through with my plan. They had it coming. Marcus stayed in touch, updating me every few days. He was making progress on the legal front, preparing documents, collecting similar case references, and hiring a process server who specialized in high-tension situations. "How do you want the papers served?" he asked. "Quietly, at home? Or somewhere public? Totally up to you." That got me thinking about Thanksgiving. It was always a big deal at her father's church, followed by dinner at their place. Her parents hosted the entire extended family, church regulars, and their close-knit circle. It would be the ultimate setting. I had a long conversation with Mike, my farm manager. He'd been with me for years, dependable to the core. I let him know I might need to leave suddenly and asked if he could manage in my absence. Mike didn't hesitate. "Whatever you need, I've got it covered." 2 weeks before the holiday, I met Emily at a roadside diner in a neighboring town. I passed her a thick envelope with a cashier's check for $225,000 inside. "Half now," I told her. "The rest after everything plays out. Just show up at Thanksgiving like normal. You're still invited, right?" She gave a quick nod. "Susan called yesterday to confirm. I think they're afraid of what I'll say if they uninvite me." "Perfect. Just keep calm and arrive a little early." She nodded again. "Jason and Katie are coming too." Susan extended the invite weeks ago. Even better, the vet and his wife in the same room? That made it flawless. Everyone who mattered, all in one place. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I was hanging out in Tom's garage while he worked on his Harley. We'd been friends since high school. He was the only one I had confided in. Why not just give her the papers at home and move on? He asked. This whole setup feels extra. It's not about theatrics, I said. It's about making sure they learn there are consequences. They've walked all over people for years without paying the price. That ends now. Tom shook his head slowly. All right, but don't call me to help hide the evidence. I laughed. No bodies, just a long overdue public reckoning. On the drive home, I felt oddly at peace. Everything was lined up. The legal side was handled. The process server was locked in. In just 2 days, Becky and her picture-perfect family would realize their little scheme had one major flaw. They underestimated me. I wasn't some soft suburban guy who'd crumble under pressure. I grew up watching crops fail, calves die, machines fall apart mid-harvest. And when life on the farm goes sideways, you don't sit around whining. You fix it and keep moving. That's exactly what I intended to do. Now came the payoff. Thanksgiving in our town wasn't just a holiday. It was a full-on production. At First Baptist, it doubled as a second Christmas. Pastor Robert hosted a massive service in a sanctuary decked out with corn husks and hay bales. Everyone with a reputation made sure they were seen. Then the chosen few were invited back to his house for a grand feast. Picture 30 or 40 people stuffed into the dining and living rooms. Susan spent days pretending she baked everything, though most of it came from a high-end caterer in the city. The guest list never changed: church elders, major donors, family, and the occasional person they were grooming for influence. Each year, we arrived early to help prepare. That meant me hauling chairs and tables while Becky and her mom chatted in the kitchen. Pastor Robert would eventually slice the turkey with exaggerated ceremony, followed by a prayer that might as well be a sermon. 3 days before, I confirmed everything with Marcus. He had the papers printed and sorted, one set for Becky, another for her parents, with backups just in case. All were sealed in labeled envelopes. The server, Derek, was scheduled to show up at 2:00 p.m., right when everyone would be sitting down to eat. I gave Emily a call to confirm her role. "Everyone still thinks I'm coming," she said. "Susan called yesterday to go over final head count. Told me to be there by 1:30. Good, just act like nothing's off and keep your phone charged." You expecting me to do anything? Nope. But trust me, you're going to want to catch it on video. The day before the event, Becky buzzed around the kitchen acting busy, transferring bakery pies into our dishes to look homemade. "Can you swing by the cleaners and grab my dress?" she asked. "Also, we've got to leave by 8 a.m. tomorrow to help Mom get everything ready." "No problem," I said, taking the slip from her hand. "Anything else you can think of?" She paused. "Maybe grab some flowers for the table. Mom loves when we bring those." "You got it." I picked up her dress and went straight to the florist. I requested the most luxurious bouquet they had. When the clerk asked if I'd like to include a message, I shook my head. No need. The flowers will deliver the message just fine. That evening, I packed a small bag with a few changes of clothes and a stash of cash, tucking it under the seat of my truck. I had a motel booked an hour out of town. Sleep didn't come easy. It felt like Christmas Eve as a kid, except instead of presents, I was about to drop a bomb on my cheating wife and her sanctimonious parents. Thanksgiving morning, I got up early and dressed in my best suit, the same one I wear to funerals and weddings. It felt fitting. Becky spent extra time doing her makeup, curling her hair, and squeezing into a new dress that accentuated the small bump she assumed I hadn't noticed. The Thanksgiving church service was exactly what you'd expect. Overflowing attendance, standing room only. Nearly 600 people packed into pews. Pastor Robert launched into his usual holiday message about thankfulness and family, glancing at me repeatedly while preaching about marital devotion and the sacred bonds of trust between spouses. I nearly bit through my cheek trying not to laugh. "God sees beyond appearances," he boomed. "He knows our thoughts, our hearts. There's no hiding from his truth." Afterward came the typical lobby linger. Hugs, small talk, stiff handshakes. Pastor Robert moved through the crowd like he was running for office, glad-handing every major donor and pillar of the congregation. Susan fluttered around, passing out extra programs, reminding the hand-picked invitees about the post-service meal. I spotted Emily near the refreshments, eyes on her phone. She glanced up and gave me the smallest nod, a silent confirmation. Guests started arriving at the Johnsons' house just after 1. The familiar roster: senior church figures and spouses, Becky's brother and his family, her posh grandmother from the retirement complex, and the usual cousins. The newcomers this year included a recently relocated physician and his wife, plus a property developer rumored to be donating a parcel for a youth facility. By 1:45, the place was full. People sipped soda and sparkling cider, because good Baptists only drink privately. I kept checking my phone for Derek's text. At 1:55, it came. In position. 5 minutes. I inhaled deeply and started moving people toward the dining area. Pastor Robert would like to get started. Please find your place cards. Becky was seated beside me, visibly uneasy. I had a feeling she was gearing up to share her pregnancy announcement during the meal. The timing was divine. Her father stepped to the head of the table. Before we enjoy this delicious spread, he began, I'd like to express a few heartfelt thanks. Right then, the doorbell rang. Susan stood halfway. I'll get it. No need, Pastor Robert said, waving her back down. Probably someone running late. He headed for the door, apron still tied. I heard him say, I'm sorry, we've already started dinner. Then Derek, sounding calm and official, I'm here for Rebecca Mitchell. A long beat. Then Pastor Robert, stiff and uncomfortable, called back into the room. Becky, someone's here to see you. Every head turned. Becky stood slowly, unsure. She walked toward the entryway, where her father stood frozen. Derek handed her a thick envelope. And this one is for Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, he added, extending two more. You've officially been served. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. Becky stood there like she'd been electrocuted. Pastor Robert looked as though the walls were collapsing. I leaned back in my chair, expression calm. No shouting, no scenes, just undeniable truth. She fumbled with the envelope, eyes wide, and turned toward me. What is this? She murmured, face pale, then flushed. In legal terms, I said, loud enough for the room to hear, it's a petition for divorce. Includes exhibits covering infidelity, paternity deception, and conspiracy to mislead. Extra sets for your parents, their name too. Her father tore into his packet, eyes scanning frantically. Susan didn't move. She just stared at me like I'd transformed into something unrecognizable. I stood, made sure the room was watching, and played a video on my phone. Becky and Jason leaving a hotel, kissing in the parking lot. The date stamp? 2 months back, when she claimed she was in Cincinnati for a marketing summit. I've got 6 hours of this, I said, rotating the phone for nearby guests to see. Plus full message threads, financial records, and I'll be requesting a DNA test for that child she's carrying. Spoiler, it's not mine. That's when Katie shot up. Excuse me, what baby? Jason, what's he talking about? Jason looked physically ill. I can explain. Explain what? I cut in. That you've been sneaking around with my wife? That the baby's yours? That your little affair had help from her family? Pastor Robert tried to recover. This is outrageous. You barge into our home with these accusations. I laughed, genuinely amused. Accusations? Check page 12, Pastor. You coached your daughter on how to hide the pregnancy. You told her to be careful. Pretty detailed for something you say didn't happen. His expression, priceless. Becky flipped through pages, stunned. How did you get this? Who? Then her eyes landed on Emily, recording steadily on her phone. You did this? Emily raised her shoulders, expression neutral. Guess your threats didn't scare me after all. Katie had Jason's envelope in hand now, tears running down her face. 6 months, she whispered. You've been doing this for 6 months? She turned toward Becky, who wouldn't lift her head. Other guests began shifting uncomfortably, some already edging toward the exit. I gave it a beat, then stood. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Becky, I'd wish you and your kid well, but I'd be lying. And to the rest of you, maybe next time don't lie for people who don't deserve it. Especially you, Pastor. Isn't bearing false witness one of your top 10? I turned and walked out. Never looked back. I didn't need to. Behind me, voices rose. Katie screaming at Jason. Pastor Robert trying to regain control. Susan crying. Something clattered to the ground. I headed straight to my truck. Before I even made it to the interstate, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Becky, how could you? We need to talk. I'm sorry. Come home. Voicemails from her father, shifting between threats and pleas. One from Susan, sobbing so hard it was unintelligible. I turned the phone off and just kept driving. My motel room was ready. After that, a new beginning, far away from the ruins they built. Later that night, I turned the phone on for a second. Emily had texted, "What a train wreck. Jason got hit in the head with a gravy boat after you left. Katie's got a good arm. Then, when do I get the other half of my payment?" Already in your account, I replied. Best money I've ever earned, she sent back. Best Thanksgiving I've ever had. Honestly, I couldn't argue with that. Sitting alone in a dusty motel off the highway, I felt better than I had in months. No lies, no more pretending. Tomorrow, I'd call Marcus to set the next phase in motion. But tonight? Tonight, I'd finally sleep easy, knowing I'd delivered the justice they never saw coming.